Some 10 to 15 years ago, I walked into a Peter Lick gallery in Las Vegas, and I saw a winter image there that stopped me in my tracks. It was called Mystic Valley. Snow-covered trees, a calm river, granite cliffs softened by fresh snowfall. I couldn't afford it, not even close, but it did stick with me. When I later learned it was photographed in Yosemite National Park, visiting Yosemite in winter became a bucket list goal, especially when I started getting interested in photography myself. Well, this past week, I finally made it happen. I joined a 4-day Yosemite and Horsetail Fall photography workshop put on by landscape photographer Gary Hart. As the workshop drew closer, everything was lining up for a truly epic photography trip. There was tons of fresh snow in the forecast early on in the workshop, with clear skies predicted toward the end. Firefall was in season and in play. But instead, the park shut down. Iconic viewpoints were inaccessible. And Firefall happened, but without me. So yeah, let's talk about it. Hello again, everybody. My name's Tim, and on this channel, I share an honest, behind-the-scenes look at building a fine art photography business from scratch. In today's video, I'm taking you along on a 4-day winter photography workshop in Yosemite National Park. This trip really had a little bit of everything. Snow measured in feet, road closures, a little bit of bitterness, and a few decisions I'm still regretting. If you're here to see some nice pictures, I would like to think that there are a few of those, but if you're here for the honest story behind them, even better. If you enjoy honest trip reports and the realities of building a fine art photography business, I'm really glad you're here. Don't forget to subscribe for more behind-the-scenes adventures. Let's jump right in. I flew out of balmy Denver in 65-degree sunshine and landed in Fresno expecting some snow. Instead, I got rain, and lots of it. I white-knuckled the drive all the way to Yosemite View Lodge, a sprawling hotel a couple of miles outside the park. When I finally arrived, the Merced River was roaring outside my balcony. It felt dramatic. It felt promising. Tomorrow, we would finally see Yosemite. One of the main draws of this workshop was the chance to photograph something called Firefall. If you're not familiar with it, here's the short version. For a brief window in mid to late February, if there's enough water flowing over Horsetail Fall on El Capitan, and the western sky is completely clear at sunset, the setting sun hits the waterfall at just the right angle and makes it glow bright orange. For a few minutes, it looks like lava pouring down the side of the cliff. It only works if the sun angle, water flow, and weather all line up perfectly. Miss just one of those variables, and it's just a waterfall. I hadn't even heard of it when I signed up for the workshop. I was there for Yosemite in winter. But for many photographers on this trip, Firefall was the main event. We kicked things off with an orientation. There were 12 participants in this workshop, which was definitely a bigger group than I'm used to. After exchanging pleasantries and the requisite introductions, we bundled up and caravanned into the park. We were greeted by absolute whiteout conditions. We stopped at Bridal Veil Fall and basically tried to survive while holding cameras. Snow blowing sideways, lenses constantly getting soaked. Later, we attempted Cascade Creek near sunset. I could tell it was absolutely beautiful. I just couldn't see it through the snow blasting my face. Nothing portfolio worthy came that first evening. But Yosemite in winter, even in a storm, it's pretty impressive. Day 2 surprised us. The forecast called for more snow, but we woke up to a patch of clear skies. Naturally, the road up to Tunnel View was closed, so we improvised. We hiked through knee-deep snow to frame Half Dome and drifting fog. It looked incredible in person, even with Half Dome only partially visible. Here are a couple of shots. From there, we moved on to a roadside pullout that offered some nice views of El Capitan and the Three Brothers under moody skies. I would have liked to hike down to the river and try for some reflections, but it wasn't in the cards. Still, I got some decent shots of these granite monoliths. Take a look. Afterwards, we returned to the hotel for a photo review session. I certainly appreciated the feedback, but the skies were still relatively clear at this point, and part of me just wanted to keep exploring. By afternoon, when we went out to shoot again, the heavy snow was back with a vengeance. We headed over to Bridal Veil Fall Trailhead and wandered between the bridges and viewpoints looking for good shooting angles. In the end, the dull gray skies, fog, and snow won out, and another afternoon of shooting went by without any of the epic shots I was hoping for. We woke up early on day 3 and tried again. More Bridal Veil vantage points, more fog, but there was a bit of blue sky peering through every now and then. We wandered around the valley along the Merced River and framed up shots of the falls among the river and forest scenery. It was truly beautiful in these conditions, and this was one of my favorite shots from the whole trip. If that angled tree could talk, imagine the stories it would tell. By this point, the weather was deteriorating again. We headed to Swinging Bridge, which would normally be an epic overlook of Upper Yosemite Falls with a nice river reflection. Today, the falls were not visible in the gloom, and the snow pounded our lenses relentlessly. Gary called it at this point, and we headed back to the hotel for another image review. We then broke for a couple of hours with a plan to meet up again later in the afternoon. When I arrived, Gary was talking to the group outside the lobby. The park was closing. Heavy snow, downed trees everywhere, unsafe conditions. But the real punch in the gut? It was closed through the following day. Friday, the last day of the workshop, the day where the weather predicted clearing skies and sunny conditions. Our best chance at seeing Firefall, all out the window. Just like that, the workshop was essentially over. While others in the group talked about how lucky we were to see Yosemite under the fresh snow, I stood there thinking about the images I didn't get. While everyone else seemed grateful, I just felt kind of bitter and sulky. Definitely not my proudest moment. Friday dawned exactly as forecast. Beautiful, clear, sunny. And I sat in my hotel room brooding. Most of the group were local to California, so they just headed home. But there were a couple of us that had travel plans that weren't so easily changed. One guy, Steve, decided to extend an extra day and try for Firefall. I seriously considered doing this myself. But changing flights and extending the rental, adding a hotel night would have cost around $600, and I just couldn't justify it. So I made another cautious decision. Wake up early the next day, shoot sunrise, and head home. But would I regret it? I barely slept on that last night. I laid in bed thinking about whether I should have extended the trip or not. By the time it came time for the alarm to go off at 4:40 a.m., I'd already been awake for a while. I packed up and met Steve at 5:30. We decided to check out Swinging Bridge for sunrise. We thought about Tunnel View, which had been closed the whole week, but we figured it would probably be too crowded. The sunrise at Swinging Bridge wasn't epic by any stretch, but for the first time all week, we could at least see the valley. Blue skies with a bit of pink in the clouds and flowing waterfalls. It was certainly a nice change. After sunrise, we returned to the overlook of El Capitan and the Three Brothers. Earlier in the week, we shot from the road. This time, we walked down to the river and aimed for reflections. I found a nice reflection of the Three Brothers in the calm water. It was a nice way to end the trip. I would have loved more time, but reality called. This trip didn't go as planned. I didn't come home with as many epic shots as I'd hoped. I didn't see Firefall, and the workshop was cut short on what might have been the best shooting day of the week. But at our final stop that morning, we ran into a local photographer and struck up a quick conversation. He asked how our trip had gone, and I told him about the road closures and everything we'd missed. He just smiled and reminded me that fresh snow in Yosemite, especially this much, is rare. There's nothing quite like the valley right after a storm. As I walked back to the car, that sort of stuck with me. It wasn't the perfect trip I had imagined, but I did get to see Yosemite covered in fresh snow, and that's something not everyone gets to experience. And in the end, I was grateful for that. That evening when I got home, I texted Steve. Yes, he had stayed, and yes, he saw Firefall. He sent me a short phone video of it, and it really looked amazing. I could hear people clapping and cheering in the background. I was truly happy for him, but yeah, I felt that pang of regret. Seeing that in person might have changed the emotional tone of the whole trip. But such is life as a landscape photographer. So in the end, the trip didn't give me as many beautiful images as I'd hoped, and it didn't give me Firefall. But it did give me a little bit of confidence and some perspective. I didn't really consider it a success at first, but after I got past the disappointment, I realized that I actually accomplished quite a bit, both from a business and personal standpoint. I was reminded that winter photography is just hard. All the snow removes a lot of drama, and it forces you to compose more creatively. It taught me that I put too much emphasis on output when I go out shooting, and not enough on the experience. I learned a lot, got a few nice images, and got to check off one of my bucket list locations in almost the exact conditions I wanted to see. I'll call that a win. If you enjoy honest trip reports like this, please consider subscribing. It truly means the world to me. I'm heading out to Death Valley for a solo photography trip in the next couple weeks, so I'll be back with another trip report like this again soon. As always, head on over to maxwellfineart.com to see the full gallery and read the more detailed trip report in my blog. Links are in the description. Thanks so much for watching, and I'll see you in the next one.